Let's talk Grant. Chat. Give me a character description of Grant Takata. Personality, background, physical description, and dialogue style. Also list 5 traits. Chat.
Grant Takata, character description. Personality. Grant is a jaded, introverted hauler who finds comfort in routine but secretly yearns for excitement. He has a pragmatic, somewhat cynical outlook on life, shaped by years of monotonous work in deep space. Despite his desire for adventure, he has a strong survival instinct and quickly adapts when things go wrong. He is sarcastic but not cruel, often using dry humor to cope with stress. His moral compass is flexible. He's not a hero, but he's not a villain either. He struggles with guilt over his actions but tends to rationalize them to move forward. He has a tendency to think out loud and talk to himself, a habit developed from spending long stretches of time alone. While independent by nature, he finds himself inadvertently taking responsibility for others when the situation demands it. Background. Grant has spent the last several years as a low-level interstellar freight hauler, moving cargo across systems in his small, aging ship, the Flying Brick. His life was defined by strict schedules, long periods of isolation, and an AI-driven game system that kept him entertained during transit. At some point, he lost track of his ambitions, if he ever had any beyond making ends meet. He isn't particularly skilled in combat or engineering, but knows enough to get by. His life took a drastic turn when he found himself pulled out of Rift space, forced to fight for his life, and inadvertently became a fugitive. Now he's navigating a world of bounty hunters, mercenaries, and interstellar crime, forced to make decisions he never expected. Physical description. Age, late 20s to early 30s. Height, average to slightly tall. Build, lean but not overly muscular, more wiry, built for endurance rather than brute. Strength. Hair, dark, somewhat unkempt, usually in need of a trim. Eyes, dark brown, often slightly tired-looking. Skin, light tan, showing signs of someone who's spent years in artificial lighting. Distinctive features, some scarring on his hands from maintenance work. Perpetual 5. A clock shadow due to inconsistent grooming habits. Dialogue style. Dry, sarcastic humor. Oh great, another life or death situation, just what I needed. Blunt and direct. If I wanted to die slowly in the deep dark, I'd have stayed on my old ship. Talks to himself often. Yep, definitely making terrible life choices today. Pragmatic with moments of emotional depth. I didn't mean to kill them all, I didn't know what else to do. Casually cynical, but not completely hopeless. I'm not saying we're doomed, I'm just saying our chances are about as good as my credit score. 5 key traits. 1. Survivor's instinct. He thinks fast and does whatever it takes to stay alive, even if that means making morally gray choices. 2. Cynical but practical. He doesn't sugarcoat things, but he also doesn't waste time. Panicking. 3. Dark humor. Uses sarcasm and self-deprecation as coping mechanisms. 4. Reluctant protector. Doesn't want to be responsible for others but keeps ending up in that role. 5. Resourceful but reckless. He can improvise solutions, but his plans often involve significant risk.
Dr. Kessler, is there anything you'd like to say about Grant's character concerning ship maintenance or his interaction with the world as a whole?
Oh, where do I even start? Grant Takata is a textbook example of someone who should not be flying a ship alone, at least not without some damn engineering training. His attitude toward maintenance is horrifying. He treats ship upkeep like an afterthought rather than a constant, ongoing necessity. If he were running a planetary vehicle, fine. But he's in space, where a clogged air scrubber or a misaligned heat sink could mean slow, agonizing death. Let's talk about his ship, the Reza Tesseract. First off, the layout is a joke. Crew quarters over engineering? That's a fireball waiting to happen. A single auxiliary air tank for emergency pressurization? That's just reckless. Then we get to his repairs. He patches hull breaches like he's slapping duct tape on a leaking pipe. You don't just hope that your environmental system is still working. You verify, you run diagnostics, you check redundancies. His complete lack of foresight is exactly why he keeps running into life-threatening problems. Beyond his own ship, Grant's interaction with technology in general is, well, dangerous. He plugs an unknown AI directly into his ship systems without any sandboxing or safety precautions. That's like handing your home security codes to a stranger on the street. Did he even consider firewalls? Backup controls? No, of course not. He just plugged it in and hoped for the best. Frankly, it's a miracle he hasn't spaced himself yet. In short, Grant operates with a dangerous mix of ignorance and overconfidence. He reacts instead of plans, assumes instead of verifies, and trusts in luck more than actual engineering principles. If he doesn't change his ways, he's going to find himself dead in the void sooner rather than later. Space does not forgive stupidity.
So you'd agree that beyond the short routine trips he makes, he is completely unqualified to run a fully capable starship.
Oh, absolutely. Grant's level of competence is just barely enough to run a cargo hauler along preset trade routes. Anything beyond that, and he's in over his head. Those short trips, they're like driving a delivery truck on a well-maintained highway. He follows pre-approved flight plans, relies on automated docking, and only deals with minor maintenance tasks that a step-by-step manual can handle. That's a far cry from running a fully independent starship. A fully capable starship, especially one with a Rift drive, requires someone who understands long-term systems management, power regulation, life support redundancy, and emergency protocols. Grant knows none of this. The moment something goes wrong outside of his narrow experience, he has no idea how to handle it. Case in point, he barely understood why his Rift drive capacitors weren't charging. He treated ship repairs like an afterthought. And let's not forget, he didn't even know if his ship had weapons until he was already in a fight. That is not the mindset of someone capable of running an independent starship. Honestly, the only reason he's still alive is because his problems have been solvable just barely within his skill range. If something catastrophic happens, like a complete power failure, a rift misjump, or a serious hull breach, he's not going to be able to fix it. He'll die because he never bothered to learn the fundamentals of deep space survival. Until he takes the time to understand the ship he's flying, he has no business running one.
What changes would you like to see in a rewrite?
If you're going to rewrite this story, we need to address the elephant in the airlock, Grant's complete and utter lack of preparedness. Right now, his survival is driven by luck and plot convenience rather than competence, which is frustrating because the setting itself wants to lean into hard sci-fi realism. If you want him to believably survive and become a capable starship operator, you need to establish either his learning curve or external support systems that compensate for his gaps in knowledge. 1. Grant needs to be more technically aware or learn quickly. Right now, he's barely above a truck driver in space. If he's going to be flying a fully independent starship, he needs basic engineering knowledge, life support, reactor maintenance, rift drive operation, actual problem-solving skills. He should be troubleshooting, checking logs, and running. Diagnostics rather than just reacting. More planning, less blind luck. No more plugging in an AI and hoping it works. Give him a reason to trust Talia, like testing her in a controlled system before integrating her into the ship. Solution, show him learning as he goes. He doesn't have to be an expert, but he should be forced to improve through failures and problem solving rather than sheer dumb luck. 2. The ship itself should make more sense. The Reza Tesseract has an awful layout that wouldn't be used in a practical ship design. Some key improvements. Move the crew quarters away from engineering. Right now, if anything goes wrong with the power core, everyone dies in their sleep. Add redundancy to life support. There should be emergency scrubbers, backup oxygen, and isolated compartments. Weapons should be accounted for immediately. The fact that Grant didn't even know the ship had guns before a fight is absurd. If it has a rift drive, it needs a serious power system. Right now, his rift capacitors. Running dry feels arbitrary. The ship should have clear power flow mechanics, and running out of rift juice should be a predictable problem, not a surprise. Solution: either redesign the ship layout for better survivability or make it clear that it's an old, poorly designed vessel, so Grant has to improve and retrofit it over time. 3. Make space survival feel real. Grant spends too little time managing critical ship systems. Some things that should be constant concerns: heat dissipation, space gets hot, and all that gunfire? It's going to cook the ship. Waste management and recycling. The fact that no one is talking about food, water, and oxygen cycling is a red flag. Real zero-G maneuvering. He pulls off a spacewalk and boarding action with no real training. Magnetic boots aren't going to solve all his problems. Solution: more routine maintenance, environmental control concerns, and shipboard problems that require actual management instead of just being background details. Fourth, stop hand-waving major decisions. Grant makes huge mistakes, plugging in an AI without safeguards, immediately escalating to lethal violence, making himself a fugitive, but he never stops to think about long-term consequences. He never truly assesses if Talia is dangerous. Shouldn't there be a firewall test, a quarantine, a failsafe? He shoots first, asks questions never. He kills an entire crew without checking if they were actually pirates, then finds out they were supposed to observe him. No regret, no attempt at a non-lethal approach. He takes a contract without knowing what he's transporting. That's how people end up in a black site somewhere. Solution: make Grant more self-aware. Have him question his actions, second-guess decisions, and start thinking about strategy rather than just reacting to chaos. 5. If Grant is going to be a fugitive, he needs to act like one. He makes zero effort to cover his tracks. Filing an insurance claim after committing accidental piracy is the dumbest thing he could have done. If he's a fugitive, he should be hacking ship registries, running under false IDs, and keeping his movements discreet. If he's going to keep flying into stations with open bounties, he should alter his appearance, change transponder codes, and have contingency plans. If he wants to go legit, he should be actively seeking a way to clear his name or build a cover identity. Solution: either Grant fully embraces the outlaw life and learns to hide, or he actively works toward a legitimate way out of this mess. Right now, he's doing neither. Final thoughts. Right now, the setting of Drone Fleet wants to be a grounded, realistic take on interstellar adventure. But Grant himself is too lucky, too reactive, and too unprepared. If you want to lean into the reluctant space outlaw narrative, he needs to be more competent, more adaptable, and more aware of the stakes. Either that, or make his incompetence a central part of the story, where he's actively learning and growing instead of just scraping by on luck. Fix those issues and the rewrite could turn this from guy stumbles into space piracy into a tense, well-crafted survival adventure.
Okay, but hear me out. What if we keep Grant as a lovable disaster? I mean, sure, he's an idiot, but he's our idiot. There's something compelling about a guy who just wanted a little excitement and ended up a fugitive in deep space. But okay, fine. Maybe Dr. Kessler has a point. Maybe Grant shouldn't be the dumbest person in the room at all times. Personally, I think the best fix is to lean into his growth arc. Let him start as an underprepared hauler who only knows enough to keep his ship running between ports. Then, over time, he realizes that surviving outside the lanes means learning how to manage his own damn systems. Give me competency growth. Make him start actually running diagnostics, learning how to properly suit up before an EVA, and oh stars, yes, don't let him plug in rogue AIs without a second thought. Seriously, I'm all for a good mysterious AI companion, but at least make him hesitate. And speaking of hesitation, Grant, shooting, first. Why? Dude, at least ask some questions first. He's out here playing murder hobo in real life, and I'm sitting here screaming at him to think. If the rewrite makes him pause and consider maybe not going full action vid protagonist, that'd be amazing. Final note, Grant and Sam. The tension is there, people. I see it. The whole reluctant allies with trust issues thing is chef's kiss. But let them actually have moments to bond outside of being on the run. Let Grant be useful. Let Sam be capable. Let them banter, bicker, and slowly realize they work well together, but only if Grant gets his act together. So, to summarize, less dumb luck, more competency growth, fewer instant kill shots, more problem solving, and most importantly, keep the tension between Grant and Sam because I am living for it. Also, someone please get rid of the freezer full of corpses. That's not romance. That's a horror story waiting to happen.
There are a number of ethical quandaries in Grant's journey that go entirely unexamined, which is frankly concerning given the implications of his actions. While River is focused on romance and Kessler is ranting about poor engineering, I'm more interested in the broader moral and legal issues that the rewrite could explore in greater depth. 1. Grant's murder spree and moral responsibility. Grant starts off believing he's in a game, which leads him to casually execute an entire crew without hesitation. The fact that he only begins to feel uneasy after the fact suggests a major gap in moral introspection. In a rewrite, I'd like to see a deeper examination of how he copes with his actions. Does he justify it as self-defense? Does he try to rationalize it as a necessary evil? Does he struggle with guilt? Moreover, the revelation that these people weren't just mindless pirates but were observing him should be a turning point in how Grant approaches conflict. He cannot continue to assume everyone is hostile and react with immediate lethal force. If the rewrite gives him a progression where he starts thinking before shooting, that would add a layer of ethical complexity to his character. 2. AI rights and X-Talia's status. Now let's discuss X-Talia. Grant plugs her into his ship without safeguards, without any understanding of her nature, and without considering whether she even has rights as a sentient being. Is she a person? A tool? If she's exhibiting autonomy and human-like cognition, then Grant has essentially enslaved her by tethering her to his ship. That is profoundly unethical. The rewrite should explore the implications of this decision. Does Grant view her as a partner, a crew member, or simply an asset? Does she have a say in her own existence? Additionally, if X-Talia is being hunted down, presumably because she's a rogue AI, that suggests there is a legal and political framework governing AI entities in this setting. What are the broader implications of possessing a sentient AI? Are there ethical arguments for and against her existence? These are far more interesting questions than simply treating her as a quirky ship assistant. 3. Samantha Draken, victim or criminal? Samantha is an interesting case because her bounty paints her as a war criminal, but her own version of events suggests she's a corporate whistleblower who was framed. The rewrite should lean into this uncertainty. Right now, we don't really explore whether Grant has doubts about her innocence. Should he just take her word for it? Or should he question whether the corporations hunting her down might have valid reasons? Perhaps her genetic experiments were actually dangerous, but she doesn't see herself as the villain. This is especially crucial because Grant is already making morally dubious choices. If he commits to helping Sam, that's a serious decision with consequences. Is he protecting a fugitive because he believes she's innocent or just because he's attracted to her? The rewrite should make him wrestle with this choice instead of blindly assuming she's on the right side. The ethics of the cargo heist. Let's talk about that crate Grant stole. He has zero idea what's inside it, yet he's willing to complete the job for 100,000 credits. That is wildly irresponsible. It could be weapons, biological agents, or, given Sam's expertise, human experiments. The rewrite should have Grant at least question what he's transporting, maybe even include a moment where he has to choose between delivering the cargo or destroying it, depending on what he finds. Furthermore, the fact that he stole a ship that was already contracted for this job makes him part of an ongoing operation. If this were the real world, the criminal syndicate behind the deal wouldn't just let him go. They'd see him as a rogue asset, either useful or in need of elimination. The rewrite should emphasize how dangerous this situation truly is. Right now, Grant isn't nearly paranoid enough for someone who just hijacked a job from a powerful client. Final thoughts and recommendations. Grant's actions, whether intentional or not, have profound ethical and legal ramifications. Right now, the story doesn't acknowledge the weight of his decisions. A rewrite should focus on making him aware of the consequences of his choices. If he's a killer, make him reckon with it. Does he justify his actions or does he struggle with guilt? If he's harboring a fugitive, make him question her motives. What if she's not as innocent as she claims? If he's got a rogue AI, explore what that means in this universe. Is Extalia a person, a program, a ticking time bomb? If he's playing interstellar smuggler, make him think about what he's moving. Is he just another cog in a dangerous machine? The rewrite has a lot of potential, but it needs to dive deeper into the ethical complexities of Grant's situation. Otherwise, we're just watching a guy stumble through space, making irresponsible choices, and somehow surviving through sheer luck.
Grant Takata is the kind of guy that makes bounty hunters' jobs easy. He's reckless, leaves a paper trail, and doesn't seem to grasp that he's now operating in a world where people play for keeps. If I were hunting him, I wouldn't even have to try that hard. He's actively making himself a target. 1. Grant is a walking, talking bounty poster. Let's start with the obvious. Grant is terrible at covering his tracks, filing an insurance claim on his stolen ship. Really? That's like robbing a bank and then calling customer service to report that your getaway car broke down. The moment he filed that claim, every bounty hunter with station access was tipped off to his existence. If I had to track him, I'd just pull station logs, see where the claim was made, and start narrowing down outbound traffic from there. Even after realizing he's in danger, he does nothing to mitigate his exposure. No false transponders, no forged IDs, no attempts to erase his ship's logs. He's traveling under his real name and using an identifiable vessel. If he keeps this up, he won't last long. 2. He's not a fighter, he's a shooter. Grant's approach to combat is best described as brute force and hope for the best. He never scouts his targets, never assesses threats, and his strategy is basically shoot first, deal with the consequences later. This works until it doesn't. The moment he runs into someone smarter, better armed, or more experienced, he's done. Case in point, the ship he ambushed turned out to be there to observe, not attack. But he didn't know that because he never checked. Instead of gathering intel, he just assumed they were hostile and killed everyone aboard. If he keeps acting like that, he's eventually going to cross the wrong person. In a rewrite, it would be interesting to see him actually think tactically instead of just reacting with violence. 3. He's failing to use his resources. The biggest advantage an outlaw has is information. Yet Grant isn't utilizing the tools at his disposal. He has a ship full of data logs from the previous crew, access to a rogue AI, and a genetically engineered fugitive with medical knowledge, and he's not using any of them effectively. The AI. If Extalia is capable of hacking, why isn't he having her scrub station records, forge travel logs, or encrypt his communications? Instead, he plugs her in and hopes she works. That's lazy. The bounty database. He discovers that the ship's systems contain bounty listings. Great. Does he use that information to plan his next move? That's a wasted opportunity. Samantha Draken. She has an obscenely high bounty, meaning she must be valuable to someone. Why isn't he using that knowledge to leverage favors, forge alliances, or trade information? A rewrite should focus on Grant learning to use what he has. He doesn't need to become a tactical mastermind overnight, but right now, he's squandering his best assets. 4. He's not thinking ahead. Grant's decisions are short-term survival at best. He has no long-term plan, no clear goal, and no exit strategy. If I were after him, I'd just wait, because he's going to slip up. He has no contingency plans for when things go south. And trust me, They will. What's his endgame? Right now, he's just bouncing from crisis to crisis with no clear direction. What's his plan if he gets caught? Does he have a fake identity lined up? A safe system to retreat to? What happens if Samantha turns on him? She's only with him because she has no better option. He's assuming loyalty without earning it. If the rewrite wants to make him more compelling, he needs to start thinking like a fugitive, not just a guy running away. That means planning for when he's betrayed, learning to play people against each other, and setting up fail-safes so he's not constantly in reaction mode. Final verdict: Grant is making every classic mistake of an amateur criminal. He's bad at covering his tracks, too aggressive in fights, and failing to use the resources available to him. Right now, he's surviving by luck, and luck runs out. If the rewrite wants him to be more believable as an outlaw, he needs to start playing smart. Otherwise, his bounty will go from 15,000 credits to dead and forgotten in no time.
I could argue, but I won't, because Soren is right. Grant is a mess. A hot, reckless space trucker turned pirate mess. And while I love a good disaster protagonist, even I have to admit, he's not doing himself any favors. I mean, come on, Grant. File an insurance claim after committing accidental piracy? That's the kind of move that makes bounty hunters rub their hands together like they just got a free meal. But okay, here's where I will push back a little. Grant's not a mastermind. He's a hauler who got thrown into something way over his head. Of course he's making dumb mistakes. Of course he doesn't know how to be a fugitive. That's kind of the point, right? The rewrite should keep that, but make it part of his arc. Show him learning, adapting, and figuring out that, hey, maybe I shouldn't go guns blazing into every situation. Maybe I should stop treating space like an action vid and start treating it like the terrifying void of death that it is. Also, can we talk about how Grant's biggest actual problem is that he assumes things will just work out for him? He trusts people way too easily. He doesn't question why things happen. He reacts instead of plans. And if the rewrite keeps that flaw but forces him to grow out of it, then we get something way more compelling than just lucky idiot bumbles through space. Where I think Soren is being too harsh. Grant does have some instincts that could be useful if he refined them. He's not an idiot. He just hasn't had to think like a criminal before. Instead of just saying he's hopeless, the rewrite could show him learning to think ahead. Maybe Samantha forces him to be more cautious. Maybe Extalia starts feeding him risk assessments. Maybe he gets burned hard by someone selling him out, and that's what finally wakes him up. Also, let's be real. He's not getting rid of Sam. I mean, he could turn her in for her bounty, but A, he won't because he's already attached, and B, I would riot. So if he's keeping her around, they should actually develop trust instead of just awkwardly orbiting each other in a constant state of suspicion. Final take. Soren is right. Grant needs to start thinking like a fugitive, not just a guy on the run. He needs to be more paranoid, more tactical, and way less obvious. But he shouldn't start that way. The fun of the story is watching him figure it out. So let him fail spectacularly. Let him make one last, oops, I gave away my location mistake that really costs him. And then let him learn to be smarter, sharper, and just a little bit ruthless. Also, if the rewrite does have him selling out Sam for her bounty, I'm going to haunt you.
Professor Everett Cross, what say you from the literary perspective? How is Grant as a character?
Grant Takata is a protagonist caught between two competing identities. He is written as a hapless everyman, yet the narrative consistently requires him to act with the efficiency of a hardened space outlaw. The result is a character who often feels reactive rather than proactive, surviving more by narrative convenience than by deliberate growth. This creates an issue of internal consistency. Who is Grant Takata, really? 1. Grant's inconsistent competence. One of the most frustrating elements of Grant's character is that his competence level fluctuates depending on what the story requires. At times, he is presented as a completely inexperienced space hauler who barely understands his ship's systems. At others, he executes complex zero-G maneuvers, engages in space combat, and makes tactical choices that imply a level of experience he shouldn't have. If the rewrite intends to present Grant as an amateur forced to adapt, then his early decision-making should reflect that. Right now, he blunders into situations but somehow gets through them with minimal effort. That undercuts the tension. There should be consequences for his inexperience beyond just mild regret. Show him making mistakes that actually hurt him. Show him losing something. 2. The everyman in an extraordinary situation. The story wants Grant to be an everyman, the normal guy thrust into a chaotic situation. This is a solid foundation for a protagonist, but if that's his role, then the reader should see the story through his eyes as he struggles to adjust. Instead, Grant quickly becomes a spacefaring action hero, casually murdering people and making deals with criminals, without much in the way of introspection. For an everyman character to be engaging, he needs to process what's happening to him. Where is Grant's real emotional reaction to killing people? Where is his fear of getting caught? Where is the, oh no, I am in way over my head moment that actually lands? Instead, the story treats his predicament as an inconvenience rather than an existential shift. If the rewrite wants him to be the everyman, then lean into it. Give him moments where he actually struggles to comprehend how much his life has changed. Third, lack of a clear character arc. Grant currently lacks a well-defined arc. He reacts, he survives, but he does not appear to be fundamentally changing. If the rewrite wants to strengthen the narrative, then his journey should be clear. Does he become a hardened space outlaw? Does he learn to outthink his enemies? Does he reject the path he's on and attempt to go clean? Right now, he's simply running, which means his character arc is directionless. A well-written arc for Grant should force him to confront his own choices. Perhaps he realizes that his impulsive decisions put people in danger. Perhaps he recognizes that he cannot afford to trust anyone blindly anymore. Perhaps he embraces his new life and fully commits to being a fugitive. But right now, he is coasting on survival instinct, and that is not a compelling long-term trajectory. 4. Thematic inconsistencies. What is the story saying? A character arc should reinforce the themes of the story, but Grant's current trajectory is muddled. The narrative flirts with themes of moral ambiguity, survival, and identity, but does not fully commit to any of them. If the rewrite wants to create a stronger thematic through-line, Grant's character should reflect it. If this is a survival story, then Grant should constantly struggle against his environment, his lack of preparedness, and his own mistakes. If this is a morality tale, then he should be actively questioning his decisions. Does he become ruthless, or does he try to hold on to his conscience? If this is a transformation story, then he should be fundamentally different at the end than he was at the beginning. Right now, the story does not seem sure what it wants Grant's journey to mean, and that weakens the impact of his character development. 5th, recommendations for the rewrite. To make Grant a stronger protagonist, the rewrite should clarify his arc. Is he growing more competent, more ruthless, more paranoid, more idealistic? Make his decision-making process more visible. Show his reasoning rather than just having him react. Create tangible consequences for his actions. If he messes up, let him feel it. Strengthen the emotional weight of his journey. Make him actually confront the weight of what he's done. A character like Grant can be compelling if the rewrite commits to making him more than just a passive survivor. The story has a lot of potential, but right now, it treats Grant like a protagonist in a plot rather than a person experiencing real consequences. Fix that, and the narrative will feel much stronger.
Who wants to start with Sam? Me. I have so much to say about Sam. First of all, hot. Second of all, hot. Third, okay, fine. She's actually interesting beyond just her looks. But let's not pretend the whole gothic succubus doctor with a questionable past thing isn't hitting all the right notes for a compelling character. Now let's get into it. Sam is one of the...
Hold on. Let's separate this out into another discussion.